The front door clicked shut at 3:47 p.m. I knew because I'd been watching the clock since my wife texted saying she was leaving work early. She never left early. In 8 years of marriage, she'd powered through migraines, stomach bugs, even a sprained ankle, always insisting the office needed her more than our couch did. "I'm home." Her voice drifted from the entryway, hoarse and weak. I found her in the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall for support, her designer coat still buttoned to her throat despite the house's warmth. Dark circles pooled under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair hung limp around her shoulders. "What's wrong?" I moved toward her, but she held up her other hand. "Don't get close. I think I've caught something. Probably the flu." She coughed delicately into her elbow. "There's something going around the office." I stopped mid-step. "You look terrible. Have you seen a doctor?" I stopped at the urgent care on the way home. She fumbled with her coat buttons, her fingers trembling. "They ran some tests. Said it's likely viral. I just need rest and fluids." "What kind of tests?" "The usual. Blood work, throat swab." She finally freed herself from the coat and draped it over the banister rather than hanging it properly, another oddity. My wife was meticulous about these things. "I'm going to take a shower and lie down. Can you sleep in the guest room tonight? I don't want you catching this." Before I could respond, she was climbing the stairs, each step deliberate and careful as if her body ached. I heard the bathroom door lock, then the shower running for nearly 40 minutes. When she finally emerged, she went straight to our bedroom and closed that door too. I stood in the kitchen, staring at her abandoned coat. Something gnawed at my gut, that instinct you develop after years with someone, the one that prickles when the familiar becomes slightly wrong. She hadn't kissed me hello. Hadn't let me near her at all, actually. And the urgent care story felt rehearsed, the details too vague yet delivered too smoothly. I picked up her coat to hang it properly and felt the weight of something in the pocket. Her phone. She'd left her phone, which she guarded like a nuclear launch code, unsecured in her coat pocket. My hand hovered over it. We'd never been the kind of couple who snooped, who violated trust with invasions of privacy. But that gnawing feeling intensified. The screen lit up at my touch. No passcode. She'd disabled it. My heart hammered as I opened her messages. The most recent thread made my blood run cold. Contact name, office, Sarah. But the messages weren't about spreadsheets or meetings. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can I see you again? My wife's working late Thursday. Come over. You're incredible. I've never felt this way." I scrolled up, my hands shaking. Weeks of messages. Months, maybe. Planning meetups, stolen afternoons, hotel rooms. And then, from 3 days ago, "I need to tell you something. In person. It's important." Yesterday's messages were frantic. "Please call me. We need to talk now." Then, this morning, I went to the doctor. "You need to get tested. I'm so sorry." The phone nearly slipped from my grip. I steadied myself against the counter, reading the last message again and again. The urgent care visit. The mysterious tests. The desperate need to keep me away from her. She hadn't caught the flu at the office. She'd caught something else entirely, from someone else entirely. Someone who wasn't named Sarah and didn't work in any office except perhaps the one where they conducted their affair. I heard movement upstairs, the bedroom door opening. I quickly locked her phone and slipped it back into her coat pocket, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm up there and confront her immediately. But another part, the part that had just had its entire world tilted sideways, needed time to process, to think, to decide how to handle this betrayal. "Honey," her weak voice called down. "Could you bring me some water and the Tylenol?" I steadied my voice. "Sure. Give me a minute." As I filled a glass, my reflection in the kitchen window stared back at me, a man who just discovered his marriage was a lie, trying to figure out his next move while his wife hid upstairs with secrets that were quite literally making her sick. I didn't sleep. How could I? The guest room felt like a cage, the darkness pressing down as I replayed every moment of the past few months through this new, devastating lens. Every late night at the office. Every weekend team building event. Every time she'd showered immediately upon coming home, claiming she'd been to the gym. The gym. God, I'd been such a fool. At 2 a.m., I pulled out my laptop and began searching. What kind of illnesses required both partners to get tested? The results made my stomach churn. STIs. Sexually transmitted infections. Each article I read felt like another knife between my ribs. Some were curable. Others weren't. All of them meant she'd been intimate with this person, this office Sarah who was clearly not a Sarah at all. I thought about the man I'd become in this marriage. I'd supported her career ambitions, taken on more housework when she needed to work late, celebrated every promotion. I'd loved her completely, faithfully, without reservation. And she'd repaid that with lies and bedrooms I'd never see with someone whose real name I didn't even know. The betrayal was one thing. But the health risk? That made it something darker, more violating. She'd exposed me to potential diseases without my knowledge or consent. How long had this been going on? When was the last time we'd been intimate? 2 weeks ago? 3. I ran the numbers obsessively, trying to calculate my own risk, my own potential exposure to whatever she'd contracted. Morning light crept through the guest room curtains. I heard the shower running again in the master bathroom, and I wondered if she was scrubbing away evidence or guilt or the touch of someone else. When it finally shut off, I waited. 15 minutes. 20. Then my phone buzzed. A text from her, still feeling awful. Going to rest more. Can you work from home today? I might need you to pick up my prescription later. Prescription. Of course. Antibiotics. Probably. Or antivirals. Something to cure what her lover had given her. I texted back, sure. Let me know what you need. I spent the morning in my home office, trying to work, failing completely. Every few minutes I'd think of something new, a vacation she'd been distracted during, a night she'd come home and picked a fight over nothing, creating distance. Had those been times she'd been with him? Was she thinking of him while lying next to me? Around noon, I heard her moving around upstairs. The bedroom door opened, then the stairs creaked. I tensed, preparing myself to maintain the act of the concerned, oblivious husband. She appeared in my office doorway, wrapped in her bathrobe, looking genuinely ill. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered why she looked this way. Hey, she said softly. I'm sorry to bother you. I just got a call from the urgent care. They want me to come back in. Some of my test results were, they need to run more tests. What kind of results? I kept my voice neutral. They didn't say specifically, just that I need to come back today. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And they asked if you could come too. They want to talk to both of us. My blood ran cold. Why would they need to talk to me? I don't know. But her voice cracked on the last word, and I knew she was lying. Maybe because we live together? In case it's contagious. Right. Of course. I stood up. When do we need to go? They said as soon as possible. I have an appointment at 3. We spent the next 2 hours in excruciating silence. She retreated upstairs again. I sat in the living room, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what I'd say when the doctors told me I needed testing too. Would I confront her there? In front of medical professionals? Or would I wait until we got home? At 2:30, she came downstairs dressed in loose sweatpants and a hoodie, clothes she'd normally never wear outside the house. We got in the car without speaking. I drove while she stared out the window, her hands twisted together in her lap. I need to tell you something, she finally said as we pulled into the medical complex parking lot. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Okay. She took a shaky breath. The thing is. A sharp knock on her window made us both jump. A woman stood there, mid-40s, professionally dressed, her face twisted with rage and tears. She held a folder of papers clutched against her chest. My wife went white. Oh God. You know her? I asked, but I already knew the answer. The woman knocked again, harder. Open this door right now. Her voice was muffled but audible through the glass. Open it, or I swear I'll make a scene that will bring every person in this parking lot over here. My wife's hand trembled on the door handle. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I can explain. Please, let me explain first. But the woman was already walking around to my side of the car, her heels clicking on the pavement like a countdown. She tapped on my window, and when I met her eyes, I saw a mirror of my own pain, the look of someone whose world had just shattered. I rolled down the window. You must be the husband, she said, her voice shaking but controlled. I'm very sorry to meet you this way. But I think we need to talk about what our spouses have been doing, and what diseases they've given each other. The woman's composure was remarkable considering the rage simmering beneath it. She stood at my car window like a prosecutor about to deliver damning evidence, that folder pressed against her chest like a shield. Or maybe a weapon. I don't understand, I said, though I understood perfectly. I just needed to hear it spoken aloud. My name is Catherine. I've been married for 16 years. 3 children. Her voice caught, but she pushed through. And for the past 7 months, my husband has been sleeping with your wife. Beside me, my wife made a small, strangled sound. Catherine, please, this isn't. Shut up. Catherine's words cracked like a whip. You don't get to talk anymore. You've done enough talking, apparently. To my husband, in my bed, while my kids were at soccer practice. My hands were still on the steering wheel, gripping it so hard my knuckles had gone white. 7 months. She'd been lying to my face for 7 months. I found out 3 days ago, Catherine continued, addressing me now. Found a credit card statement he'd hidden. Hotel charges. Restaurants I'd never been to. When I confronted him, he broke down. Told me everything. She laughed bitterly. Well, almost everything. He left out the part about the gonorrhea. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Gonorrhea. My wife had gonorrhea. Which meant I might have it too. He came home from the doctor yesterday, Catherine said, opening her folder. Gave me these. She pulled out several papers, medical documents with official letterheads. Test results. Positive for gonorrhea and chlamydia. The doctor asked where he might have contracted them. That's when he admitted there was someone before your wife. A woman from his gym, apparently. A brief thing, he said, like that makes it better. I felt like I was underwater, sounds distorted, reality bending. Before. Oh, you didn't know. Catherine's smile was cruel. Your wife wasn't his first affair. Just his most recent. He gave her these infections, and now she's given them to you. Probably. That's why you're here, isn't it? For testing. My wife's door suddenly flew open, and she stumbled out, vomiting into the landscaping. Catherine and I watched in silence as she retched, one hand braced against the car. When she finally straightened, tears streaming down her face, she looked at me through the windshield. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Catherine walked around to where my wife stood, maintaining a careful distance. Sorry doesn't cure infections. Sorry doesn't give me back my marriage or explain to my children why mommy and daddy are getting divorced. She held out the papers. But these might help him understand what you've done. I got out of the car, my legs unsteady. Catherine handed me the documents, and I scanned them with growing horror. Positive results. Treatment plans. A note about partner notification, a clinical way of saying tell everyone you've infected. Where is he now? My wife asked quietly. Your husband. At his mother's house. Where he'll be staying permanently. Catherine's voice hardened. I want you to understand something. I didn't come here for you. I came for him. She pointed at me. Because I know what it's like to be the one left in the dark while your spouse destroys everything. He deserves to know the truth, all of it, not some sanitized version you'd eventually tell him. How did you find us? I asked. Your wife's name was all over his phone. Social media made the rest easy. I saw your post about coming to this medical center for her appointment today. Catherine shrugged. Technology makes everything so much easier, doesn't it? Cheating. Getting caught. Ruining lives. My wife was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. I never meant for this to happen. We connected, and it felt. Don't. I finally found my voice, and it came out like gravel. Don't tell me how it felt. Don't tell me about your connection. You exposed me to diseases. You lied to me for 7 months. You stood in our home, in our bed, and you lied. I was going to tell you today, she sobbed. After the appointment. I was going to tell you everything. Only because you got caught by biology, Catherine interjected. If you hadn't gotten sick, how much longer? Another 7 months. A year. Until he gave you something incurable. The cruelty of it hit me then. She'd only confessed because she had no choice. The infections had forced her hand. If not for that, I might still be in the dark, trusting her, loving her, while she lived this double life. I need details, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. How long until I can get tested? What's the treatment? What are the chances I have this? Catherine handed me more papers. This is information about both infections. Gonorrhea and chlamydia are both bacterial, treatable with antibiotics. But you need to be tested immediately. If you've been intimate with her in the past few weeks, your risk is high. 10 days ago. We'd been intimate 10 days ago. She'd come home from dinner with colleagues, had wine on her breath and an urgency I'd mistaken for desire. Had she been with him that day too? Had she gone from his bed to mine? The thought made me physically ill. I'll leave you two to sort this out, Catherine said, stepping back. But I wanted you to know the truth. All of it. Not the version she'd eventually work up the courage to tell you. She looked at my wife with undisguised contempt. Goodbye. I hope you understand what you've destroyed. And I hope it was worth it. She walked away, her heels clicking across the parking lot, leaving us standing there with her truth scattered between us like broken glass. The urgent care center's fluorescent lights felt accusatory as we sat in the waiting room, 3 chairs between us. My wife kept trying to catch my eye, but I stared straight ahead, those medical documents still clutched in my hand. Around us, people scrolled through phones, coughed into elbows, lived their normal lives while mine disintegrated. Your turn, the nurse called out, looking at my wife. She stood slowly, then paused. Will you come with me? She asked quietly. No. She flinched like I'd struck her, then walked through the door alone. I watched it close behind her and felt nothing but a vast, echoing emptiness where my marriage used to be. 20 minutes later, a different nurse called my name. I followed her to an examination room where a doctor with kind eyes and graying hair waited. I understand you're here for STI testing, she said gently. Your wife indicated you may have been exposed. The clinical language made it almost bearable. Exposed. Like it was a chemical spill instead of a betrayal. Yes. Her. The man she was seeing tested positive for gonorrhea and chlamydia. We were intimate about 10 days ago. The doctor nodded, making notes. I'm going to test you for both, plus a full panel including HIV, syphilis, hepatitis B and C. Given the circumstances, it's better to be thorough. HIV. The word sent ice through my veins. Could she have? It's unlikely, but we test for everything to be safe. The good news is that gonorrhea and chlamydia are both highly treatable with antibiotics. If caught early, there are usually no long-term complications. Usually. No long-term complications. The words felt surreal. We were discussing my health, my body, my exposure to diseases I'd never imagined having, all because the person who'd promised to love and cherish me had chosen something else. The testing was quick but humiliating. Urine sample. Blood draw. Swabs. Each procedure a reminder of how thoroughly my wife had violated our trust. Results for gonorrhea and chlamydia will be back in about an hour, the doctor said. The other tests take a few days. In the meantime, I'm going to prescribe you prophylactic antibiotics. It's standard protocol when exposure is likely. So you treat me before you know for sure. Better safe than sorry. If you test negative, no harm done. If you test positive, we've already started treatment. She paused. I also recommend you abstain from sexual activity until we have all results back and you've completed treatment. I almost laughed. Sexual activity. With her. The woman who'd endangered my health and demolished my trust. That won't be a problem. Back in the waiting room, my wife was already there, a small pharmacy bag in her lap. She'd been given the same prophylactic treatment. We sat in our separate chairs, two people who'd once shared everything now separated by an unbridgeable chasm of lies. We need to talk, she finally said. Not here. Then where? You won't even look at me. I turned to face her fully for the first time since Catherine's revelation. What exactly do you want me to say? That it's okay? That I understand? 7 months. You looked me in the eye for 7 months and lied. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did it anyway. I kept my voice low, aware of other patients nearby. Every time you left for a work event. Every time you texted him while sitting next to me. Every time you came home from being with him and touched me, you hurt me. You just didn't care enough to stop. That's not fair. I cared. I got lost. Lost. The word tasted bitter. You weren't lost. You made choices. Hundreds of them. Every single day for 7 months. You chose him over me. Over us. Tears spilled down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. It wasn't about choosing. It was. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't try to explain it as some romantic confusion. You exposed me to diseases. That's not love getting confused. That's selfishness. Recklessness. The nurse called us both back. My results were ready. We followed her to a consultation room where our doctor waited with a tablet. I have your preliminary results, she said, looking between us. You tested negative for both gonorrhea and chlamydia. The relief was so intense I felt dizzy. Negative. I didn't have them. However, the doctor continued, given the timing of your last sexual contact and the incubation period, I want you to retest in 2 weeks to be absolutely certain. Continue the antibiotics as prescribed, and we'll run the full panel again. And her? I asked. The doctor glanced at my wife. She tested positive for both. She's been started on treatment. So she had them. Had carried them. Had potentially passed them to me. The only reason I'd escaped was timing, random, arbitrary luck that I hadn't been infected during our last encounter. We left with our prescriptions and follow-up appointments scheduled. In the car, silence stretched between us like a living thing. I drove on autopilot, not heading home but not knowing where else to go. Where are we going? She asked finally. I don't know. I can't be in our house right now. We need to talk about what happens next. What happens next? I pulled over into an empty parking lot, finally letting the anger I'd been controlling break through. You want to know what happens next? I'm going to drop you at the house. Then I'm going to a hotel. Then I'm going to call a lawyer. Please don't say that. We can work through this. Couples survive infidelity all the time. Couples survive when there's something left to save. When there's honesty and remorse and a foundation to rebuild on. I turned to face her. You exposed me to diseases. You lied for 7 months. You only told me because you had no choice. What exactly is left to save? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I love you. I know I don't deserve to say that, but it's true. I love you, and I'm so sorry. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was 7 months of calculated decisions. Hotels. Lies. Risking my health. Those aren't mistakes. That's a choice to value your wants over my well-being. I started the car again and drove her home in silence. I dropped her at the house without going inside. Watched her walk up the driveway we'd once walked together planning our future, back when I believed in permanence and vows. She turned at the door, her face a portrait of devastation, but I pulled away before she could say anything more. The hotel room was generic and sterile, exactly what I needed. No memories here. No photographs on walls or shared spaces that whispered about what we'd been. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself fall apart. I called my brother first. He listened in silence as I explained everything, and when I finished, he said simply, "I'm coming over." "You don't have to." "I'm coming over." He arrived within an hour with beer, pizza, and the kind of quiet support that didn't require words. We ate mostly in silence, the television playing something neither of us watched. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. "Divorce her." The word felt both too big and too small. I can't. I can't be with someone who did this. Who risked my health like it meant nothing. That's reasonable. Is it? Everyone always talks about working through infidelity. Marriage counseling. Rebuilding trust. Everyone isn't you. Everyone didn't live your marriage. He set down his beer. But I'll tell you what I think. Trust isn't just broken here. It's obliterated. She didn't just cheat, she endangered you physically. That's a different level of violation. I nodded, grateful that someone understood. I keep thinking about Catherine. His wife. She has kids. They have a whole different level of destruction to deal with. Doesn't make yours less valid. My phone had been buzzing all evening with texts from my wife. I finally opened them, reading through her desperate pleas and apologies. In the middle of them was something different, a long message that felt more honest than anything she'd said in months. "I know you won't believe this, but I need to tell you anyway. It started as an ego thing. He paid attention to me when I felt invisible everywhere else. Made me feel young and exciting instead of just tired and ordinary. I'm not making excuses, there are none. But I want you to understand that it was never about you not being enough. It was about me being broken in ways I didn't know how to fix. I knew it was wrong every single time. Hated myself every time I lied to you. But I was caught in something I didn't know how to stop. And when I found out about the infections, the shame was so intense I wanted to disappear. Catherine's husband had them. He gave them to me. And I might have given them to you. The person I promised to protect, I endangered. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I'm sorry isn't just words. It's the only truth I have left. I destroyed us. I know that. And I'll have to live with that forever. I read it twice, then set the phone down. Her words didn't change anything. Understanding someone's brokenness doesn't obligate you to stay while they cut you with their sharp edges. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed at the hotel and met with a lawyer. The divorce process was surprisingly simple when both parties knew the marriage was over. She didn't fight me on anything, took full responsibility, agreed to whatever division of assets I proposed. I almost wished she'd fight, give me something to be angry about. Instead, her compliance just felt like confirmation that she knew what she'd destroyed. My retest came back clean. The doctor confirmed I'd never contracted the infections. Pure luck and timing had saved me. I left the clinic with a clean bill of health and the knowledge that I'd dodged a bullet that had been aimed at me without my knowledge. I went back to the house one last time to get my things. She was at work. We'd coordinated schedules to avoid each other. Walking through those rooms felt like touring a museum of my former life. The couch where we'd watched movies. The kitchen where I'd cooked her favorite meals. The bedroom where she'd lain beside me while thinking of someone else. I packed efficiently, taking only what was mine, leaving behind anything that felt like ours. On my way out, I left my key on the kitchen counter beside a note. "Divorce papers are with your lawyer. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for. I hope it was worth it." 6 months later, I was settling into my new apartment across town. The divorce was finalized. I'd gotten tested twice more, just to be absolutely certain, and remained clean. My wife, ex-wife, had moved to another city for a new job. A fresh start, she'd called it in one of her last emails. I didn't respond. I'd learned things about myself through this. About my capacity for both pain and resilience. About the difference between forgiveness and acceptance. I could accept that she'd been broken, that she'd made terrible choices, that she'd destroyed our marriage. But I couldn't forgive the fundamental violation of my trust and safety. Catherine and I had exchanged a few emails. She was further along in her healing, focused on her children and rebuilding her life. She thanked me for not making a scene in that parking lot, for letting her say what she needed to say. "You gave me the power that day," she wrote. "Power to tell the truth, to stop them from controlling the narrative. I'll always be grateful for that." I hadn't thought of it as giving her power. But maybe that's what we both needed, to take back control from the people who'd made choices that affected our lives without our consent. My brother asked if I was dating yet. I wasn't ready. Maybe wouldn't be for a while. But I was okay with that. I was learning to be alone without being lonely, to find value in myself rather than in someone else's perception of me. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about that day, Catherine appearing like an avenging angel in the parking lot, medical papers in hand, ready to detonate our carefully constructed lies. I wondered if she regretted the affair or just regretted getting caught. I'd never know, and I'd learned I didn't need to. What I needed was to move forward, to build a life based on honesty, even when it was painful. To trust again, eventually, when I found someone worthy of that trust. To remember that someone else's betrayal didn't diminish my worth or my capacity to love. The scars would always be there, phantom pains that surfaced unexpectedly. But scars were evidence of survival, of wounds that had healed. I was surviving. More than that, I was slowly learning to thrive again. My phone buzzed with a text from a friend inviting me to dinner. I looked around my new apartment, smaller than the house, but mine. Honest. Uncomplicated by lies. I texted back yes, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the door. The evening air was cool and clean. Somewhere in another city, my ex-wife was living with her choices. Somewhere nearby, Catherine was putting her children to bed and rebuilding her family. And me. I was learning that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. That betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it. That health, physical and emotional, is worth protecting fiercely. I walked toward my car, toward dinner with friends, toward whatever came next. The past would always be there, a shadow I'd carry. But shadows only exist where there's light. And I was walking toward the light.